Before we dive in, here's another show you can enjoy in the True Story FM family of entertainment podcasts.
What's up, most excellent friends?
It's Chrissy and Nathan from the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast.
It's a podcast where a filmmaker and a comedian
And their most excellent guests
adventure their way through the 80s movies we think we love
or might have missed.
with our grown-up eyes to see how they hold up.
Join us for delightful discussion,
Rollicking recaps.
ratings, and deep-cut recommendations.
Plus, members get some extra fun chit-chat with the hosts after the show.
Download the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast today at truestory.fm.
Or find it wherever the finest podcasts are stored.
And do remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind.
Be excellent to each other and...
Party on.
Party on, dudes.
Ever wonder where the devil got his horns?
How about those cloven hooves?
Or that pitchfork?
Wasn't he an angel?
No, he was a snake.
No, he's the great red dragon.
No, he's the beast.
He's the prince of this world.
Prince of darkness.
Well, he's the prince of dark.
Good morning, star lovelies. One of my names is Lester Ryan Clark.
And I sometimes go by Keenan Diaz.
And we're the hosts of the brand new podcast, The Devil's Details. What comes to mind when I say Lucifer?
How about Satan?
What about just the devil? How did the big bad of the Western world end up with so many faces? Join us as we dig up, decipher, and deconstruct the devil's many forms throughout history.
Take a guided tour with Dante through the 9 circles of hell.
Or revisit Satan's angsty bad boy years in Paradise Lost.
Learn the ins and outs of a Faustian contract.
Easier than a 1099, but with a hell of a lot more fine print.
Slither on over to The Devil's Details on True Story FM and join us in the diabolic discussion.
Love and hisses. Mwah! Didn't Al Pacino play him in a movie?
Are you sure that wasn't Robert De
I could
Niro?
have sworn it was Tim Curry.
That was Elizabeth
Didn't
Hurley.
he go down to Georgia at some point?
Hello, world. Welcome to the Adrian Moment on TrueStory.fm. Thank you for listening to us wherever you get your podcasts. Like us, rate us, give us 5 stars to tell people these are the moments they don't want to miss. I'm Ocean Murff, and I'm joined by the resident baseball expert of the show, Jim Pullen.
Wow, that's too big of a title, but I appreciate it. I just enjoy baseball, but all right. Yeah, resident expert, I guess between the two of us, yes. All right.
But between the two of us and just about anybody else I've ever met ever, yes, you'd be the resident expert of baseball. So you should not, don't sell yourself short. Own it, lean into it. Be like,
right.
if people want to know something about baseball, they're gonna come to you. And if they don't come to you, they're not getting the facts.
I am not the hear all say all, but I appreciate that though. I mean, at least I am for you. So
okay.
That's all
well,
that matters,
you should at least be. Yes, you are. Well, you are for this show. So.
All right.
So today,
it's an esteemed honor, but
we're just
please correct me if I'm wrong.
okay. So today, I think we will do things a little bit differently and jump right into introducing the movie that we are going to discuss. And today's movie is 8 Men Out. 8 Men Out is obviously a baseball movie that was released in 1988. And it stars a lot of different actors, starting with John Cusack, Michael Rooker, David Strathairn, can't pronounce that name correctly, Charlie Sheen, Clifton James, John Mahoney, and D.B. Sweeney. It was directed by John Sayles, written by Elliot Asanoff and John Sayles. And the IMDb logline is a dramatization of the Black Sox scandal when the underpaid Chicago White Sox accepted bribes to deliberately lose the 1919 World Series. So you may be listening to this wondering, why were we talking about this movie? Well, we are talking about it because most recently, the commissioner of Major League Baseball decided to lift the bans, lifetime bans on Pete Rose and Shoeless Joe Jackson, who is Shoeless Joe Jackson is one of the main characters of this movie. And so, since that is our lead into it, what are your thoughts, Jim, about the lifting of this ban? Should it have been lifted? Should it have ever existed in the first place? Any other intelligent question I hadn't thought to ask you?
Yeah, it's kind of like mixed emotions. I mean, especially for me, I loved Pete Rose. I grew up a huge Pete Rose fan. Johnny Hustle. There was everything that I wanted to be as a baseball player. And then when he got banned, it was upsetting, and he got banned as a manager, not a player, but he was banned from baseball, banned for life. I mean, here was Johnny Hustle, the guy that is the hits leader of all MLB, banned for life for doing something as a manager. And it always it was conflicting for me. Ban him, sure, from baseball, but don't ban his accomplishments. The man's accomplishments were done cleanly, and what he had done as a manager may or may not have been bad or not.
They didn't erase his records.
No, none of his records are erased,
Okay.
or none of his, none of it. But like, he's the hits leader, so he should have been in the Hall of Fame as a live person. So seeing when he was banned from all of baseball, and he's alive, and he should have been voted in as the all-time hits leader, it was upsetting to me. The lifetime ban, I understand it. I understand you're banning because you broke a significant law, rule, policy within MLB, and I do support that. But he was a manager, and I still think that his accomplishments should have been recognized in the Hall of Fame while he was alive, because his accomplishments were as a player. There's some deeper depth in there. He was a manager player for a while, but he wasn't betting while he was a manager player. He bet only while he was a manager.
Do you think that the ban should have been lifted?
Yeah, I think it should have been lifted a long time ago, especially when Major League Baseball started accepting all of these different bet sites to be their sponsors. Like, you are accepting these people, you're accepting their money. You're accepting to put their logo on jerseys or on walls or on video screens. But yet here is the man, the legend, not allowed in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, I don't know that I
For an
agree.
infraction while he was a manager.
Yeah, I don't know that I agree that he would have been a legend absent the ban. I think that had they let him in the Hall of Fame, Pete Rose never would have been that big of a deal.
No, come on.
There's been some guy in the Hall
You're
of Fame.
poking the bear now. You got to move on. Come on now. He's the all-time hits leader.
So what? He himself even said that he would not be anywhere near as famous as he was now had it not been for the ban, because it kept him in the pop culture and in the minds of common people now that never saw him play. And so I think that had he just been allowed to be in the Hall of Fame, he would have been in the Hall of Fame. Baseball fans, of course, would know who he was, and he would have that resume. But as far as the big deal of him specifically, I don't know that would have existed absent of him being banned. Maybe the same could be said for Shoeless Joe Jackson in this movie. Would he be a big deal if he had just been allowed into the Hall of Fame and moved on? Is he a big deal now?
It's a little different, Shoeless Joe versus Pete Rose, because Pete Rose got to play out his career. He got to finish his career. Shoeless Joe Jackson didn't necessarily get to finish his career. He was told at the end of that season, and once the Mountain came in and was the commissioner and got rid of or put in the ban for those 8 players. So to me, it's kind of like, yeah, he was having a Hall of Fame career and he was banned, but I don't truly know how to answer that question of, if he, Shoeless Joe Jackson, was in the Hall of Fame, how much noise or how much would we be aware of even of Shoeless Joe Jackson, unless you were like a deep baseball fan? And I think it's tied to each other. You were banned. So
given that they are related, and bringing it back around to the movie, given the amount of money players make today, is the situation or this movie itself still relevant?
I don't think so. You would have to get so much money from a third party to make it worth your while. And I just don't, I think with all the ticket voucher bonus that you get in the World Series after, like if it's a 5-game series, there's a bonus that the players get after game 3. They get a percentage of the ticket sales, and they get their own, contingency is that they sign for in their contract. So, if they have a provision within their contract that says, you'll get $250,000 if we make it to, the divisional series or whatever, there's a lot more offered to them. So I don't believe that the temptation would be there. If anything, the temptation would be perhaps to place a bet just within baseball and that can bring up a whole nother scandal and a whole nother situation. But
because of the amount of money they make now, if that is not relevant, then why don't we dive a little bit more into the movie? So
Okay.
in the movie itself, in 1919, the White Sox, they had a really good team. They were favored to win the World Series, and the movie opens with them winning a pennant and their owner giving them flat champagne because he's cheap and he doesn't want to pay them what they're worth. That then creates the motivation of the characters of I say characters, but it's interesting because these were real people. So
Right.
it created the motivation for the Chicago White Sox to then elicit or listen to, I don't know if they went out and looked for the gamblers or the gamblers looked for them to accept a bribe of $10,000 a piece to throw the game. And when you say a piece, too, it isn't the whole team. That's kind of why there's only 8 men out who are considered to be part of the group that either threw the game or knew about throwing the game. So therefore, they were banned from baseball for life. And so the amount of money that we're talking about with the $10,000. So in today's money, that is approximately $183,000. With that situation, the way it was portrayed in the movie, do you find that you are sympathetic or almost even supportive of the players hatching this scheme because they feel that they are not getting paid what they're worth through baseball and they're deciding that we want to get what we are worth through other means?
Yeah. I mean, even all the other times that I've ever watched it, I'm always like pro player. Like, yeah, let's go do this. It wasn't really until after the rewatch for our show and then digging into some of these numbers and kind of digging around where it was kind of like, ooh, I don't.
So you don't know, like maybe now think they should not have done it?
Yeah, like after, so it's crazy, right? I mean, I love baseball. I play baseball still, everything. I would never do anything to harm my players or harm the validity of the game. But the way that the story is presented to you, all the other times I've ever watched it, I'm just like, yeah, I'm all in for you guys getting some extra cash. Comiskey's, he's horrible. He's a fat cat that never shares any of the cash. But we started digging into this, and he had like one of the highest payrolls in all MLB in 1919. And it was like, okay, if you had one of the highest payrolls in 1919, and these guys are complaining, sure, you won a World Series 1917 and a few years prior to that.
That doesn't mean necessarily they're going to get a lot of money from that. I think that,
right,
since they were paid on average of $3,000 to $5,000 a year, and $5,000 a year, then going back to my handy dandy spreadsheet of math, is $92,000 today. So they were making $92,000 a year at a time when, while there were millionaires, there were no billionaires, and $92,000 was a lot of money. Well, let me rephrase that. $92,000 is a lot of money, but $3,000 to $5,000 back then was a lot of money per year. So is that why they are now less sympathetic? Because contemporaneously, they are being very well paid. They should get paid more because the baseball attendance, and really back then it's attendance, there's no TV rights. Should they be sympathetic in any way, or are they, in a sense, oddly the bad guys?
I mean, they're oddly the bad guys now, but
you mean they're not the bad guys now? So back then they were and now they're not, or back then they are not and now they are? Or maybe they never were.
Flippity floppity flippity doodly.
They never were. Maybe they always were. Like,
yeah, I think they were always were. I think that's a great way of saying it. It's like, I think you end up feeling that you want to provide empathy for these guys because of the way that they look like they're scrappers, right? Yeah, I want to give empathy to these guys for the reasoning for throwing a World Series to gain more money, and then. Really, if you start equating it, they're working with 2 or 3 other people, and it's potentially going to gain a lot more money in your pocket rather than just going through one better.
If the gamblers had come through with the amount of money that was originally promised, then yes, they were not paid what they were promised. And as a result, they made some other decisions. So, it's that. In the movie, are you sympathetic for these guys because they're not making enough money and they're doing this gambling scheme to throw the World Series to make enough money to get by? Then they are treated as pawns by the gamblers because the gamblers recognize rightfully, like really anyone should have, was after they threw the first game and definitely the first 2 games, the gamblers own them now. So whether they get paid or not, they still got to throw these games. And then are they now and I'm saying in air quotes, they're now victims in air quotes from the owners by not getting paid. Then they're victims from the gamblers by not getting paid. So then are these guys just victims? Are they not smart? Was there some other way that they should have potentially tried to do something to get more money and handle that situation? Even the way it's couched in this movie, we're presented with a story as if they did not have much of another choice. And
Mhm.
I don't know that I agree with that. I think that they had a choice.
Right.
They could have just not thrown the game.
Yep.
Or the series.
Well, it's like this, the story presents it to us that they're the victims of their own demise. And I truly do believe what you just said. There probably were other choices. There definitely was the choice of, hey guys, let's just not do this. This isn't right. Speaking in terms of dollars, I'm not seeing the motivation here. I mean, sure, the motivation of getting extra bucks. Yeah. Everybody wants extra bucks, but to throw the game, I don't see it. So in my youthful side of my brain, all the times that I've watched this, to me, the money that they were seeking far exceeded what they were getting per game or for the whole year. And it's kind of like now the adult me in looking at this, I'm questioning, like, where was the motivation? What turned so horrible that you were willing to do this? It's just, I don't know. For the love of the game, I couldn't do that.
Okay, so then why don't we step back for a second about the seriousness of baseball and the moment itself and talk about the movie in terms of the acting performances. Were there any acting performances of characters you thought were particularly good or particularly bad?
I mean, taking a look at it from that perspective, no. I mean, it was all kind of like meh for me.
The whole movie was meh. You did not
No,
find.
no,
What
not the
about
whole
those?
movie. Like,
You didn't like
the
the
actor
little kids
performances.
that were
Like,
the actor
the little
performances.
kids
Yeah,
are great.
little
Man,
kids
those
were
little
great and
kids,
everything. Yes,
those little
that
kids are great.
they had their little hustle at the beginning of the movie, and that looked good. And so I did like Michael Rooker as Chick Yandel in that he
You
seemed
love Michael Rooker,
appropriately.
though. I mean, I love
I
Michael
do, I
Rooker.
do, I do, I do. I
Anyways,
like
too, but
I like him in most things. Michael Rooker was also in Mississippi Burning, and we had a hard time with that one.
okay.
But
Yeah.
but at the same time, no, I did like him. I thought he was appropriately kind of sleazy in this,
Yeah,
and
very sleazy.
so I like that. I like David Strathairn's turn as Eddie Chakotay, and that as much as you could try with this material to try to make them appear sympathetic, I think he did a good job of trying to portray that and portraying himself as someone who is really just looking to try to better his life. I don't know that $92,000 today or $10,000 then. I don't know that that is life changing money, but it is life improvement money. But getting back to the chick and Michael Rooker, the sleaziness of which he operated throughout the movie, and how he was able to, in a sense, corral or cajole some of the other people to then go along with this because he was the one that really initiated it from the standpoint of dealing with the bookies. His performance for me stood out as good in the movie.
Forget it. I make $6,000 a year. A lot of people are out of work.
How old are you, Eddie? How long is the arm gonna hold up?
Arm's fine.
You got hurt, Tommy wouldn't even pay your train fare home. What do you do then? I hear you plan on sending those girls of yours to college.
Look at Chick, will you just get off my back?
Just hear me out, will you? Hey, what's your hurry?
I got a meeting with the old man.
Right now?
5, please.
Hey, you wouldn't say nothing, would you, Eddie?
I'm going to say I felt like his sleaziness was a little over the top.
So then if he's too sleazy over the top, we could recast him. So would this movie be better if it was Kevin Costner? You know, if Kevin Costner played Chick. Given this came out in 88, Bull Durham was released in June and 8 Men Out was released in September, both in 88, and then he Field of Dreams in 89. Also a movie with the Chicago White Sox. So then he could have, had a baseball trilogy right there, back to back to back. So then what do you think then? Kevin Costner is a sleazy chick? I guess as a sleazy chick, that's kind of funny when you say it that way.
I know. I'm like,
as a sleazy chick, yeah. As a sleazy chick, Gandalf.
What? Look cute in a dress, though. What was the question again?
Well, you thought Rooker's sleaziness was over the top, and so I thought, well, maybe we go with another. I don't know if it's more stately actor, but someone who maybe could be sleazy in a different way.
I don't think
Kevin Costner. It's baseball. I mean, isn't there a rule that Kevin Costner's in every baseball movie somewhere?
I mean, he should be. He should have a hand in a baseball movie in every release. But no. I don't think Kevin could have pulled that off. No.
Okay.
No, that's not Kevin's style, right? I mean, he's more like elegant, he's
sure, but
seasoned sleaze.
Look, I thought Chick sleaze was nice and elegant. John Mahoney's doing a great job with the Kid Gleason being all happy and positive about everything, but at the same time, I liked Michael Rooker's sleaziness.
I mean, like, if I could pull like the bottom of the arcs that I'm talking about,
Okay.
you know,
What's the bottom?
to me, it's D.B. Sweeney.
Really? You
Yeah.
you didn't like him as Shoeless Joe Jackson? Well, now, did you not like his performance, or was it surprising to you, as it was to me, that they portrayed him in this movie as really a complete idiot? I mean, yes, he was illiterate and he could not read.
Right.
But the inability to read, especially in 1919, is not inherently make you stupid.
Right.
And they made it where he seemed like he was stupid, which I'm not saying that he wasn't. I don't know anything of. I don't know him, obviously, and I don't know enough about him to say that he was some Mensa candidate. But the movie portrayed him that way. So then, was what you didn't like about D.B. Sweeney's performance? Was it the acting, or was it the writing of him being so dumb?
I'm going to say that D.B. Sweeney pulled out that portrayal of Shoeless Joe Jackson. I don't think that was in the writing. I don't think I'm going to blame D.B. Sweeney on that, to me. It's his portrayal of somebody who can only understand how to write an X, and his wife has to read him the news. I couldn't find anything that would indicate that, he was the way that he was portrayed. I couldn't find anything on Shoeless Joe Jackson in that regard. So to me, I'm unhappy with the portrayal of that D.B. Sweeney offered us for Shoeless Joe Jackson.
Okay, so you think then that is an actor's choice as far as that type of a performance versus what was on the page?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then I guess we could also then recast Shoeless Joe Jackson. So let's say that he has to be played by an actor named Tom. Who should it have been? Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, Tom Selleck?
Dude, that is such a great question. I mean, Tom Cruise already had Risky Business, right? So I don't think it could be him. Tom Hanks, no, he was already too big for that, right? I mean, he's already done some small roles.
Tom Hanks?
Yeah.
Oh, this is like
at that
just
time.
before.
No.
This is just before Big.
Right, but I mean, he was up and coming. I think it was too small of a role for Tom Hanks.
Really?
For the way that he was coming up.
The most popular baseball player on the team was too small of a role for Tom Hanks?
He was the most popular most popular by name and mention, but like role-wise, if I was an actor and I was up and coming for Tom Hanks and I had to choose between 8 Man Out or Big, let's just say, right?
Okay, let's say.
And I'm looking at the script for Big versus the script and role that I would be playing in 8 Man Out. I'm going Big.
Okay.
As an actor, right?
Yeah, I get what you're saying with that as far as if you had to choose, but I think in this fantasy world, they don't have to choose.
Okay. Well, if I'm okay, then okay, fine. Then if in my fantasy world, given with the question from, it's your fantasy world, it's your question.
Okay.
Directed at me, I'm going with Tom Hanks. I would take Tom Hanks and ask him to play a Shoeless Joe Jackson and do the research to find out what type of Shoeless Joe Jackson would Tom Hanks play.
Well, then I guess
with limited lines and limited scenes.
You know what? I think I'll go back to your universe and say, okay, well, if we can't have Tom Hanks because he's doing Big, I mean, Tom Selleck doesn't have a whole lot going on right now.
Are you kidding me?
He's like Magnum PI. He's doing some TV. Yeah. That's it. And this is back when
he and that mustache are going to come in and not do anything. Come on.
Exactly. Well, no, that was back when people looked down on TV actors. I mean, he's dying for a role. He's kicking himself because he didn't get to be Indiana Jones, and so now he wants to play some baseball.
But it's Magnum PI. Everybody already loved Magnum PI.
Right, but Magnum PI ended in 1988, so he was at the end of that. So he's ready to go back to movies. This could have been his entryway.
Too small of a role.
Okay, well, I don't know. Well,
I'm dropping the mic on that.
Okay, all right.
Too small a role.
Too small of a role. Okay.
I mean, I'm not an actor. All right, but if I'm looking at my credentials and I'm looking at the scenes that are being shot for that movie, and I'm reading what I'm supposed to read on the page. I mean, there's only a couple of pages. It's going to be mostly notes. And then you get to define the character as we get to see it portrayed. There's nothing there. There's no meat and potatoes for him.
Okay. So then in this too small of a role, is this the best work as an actor for D.B. Sweeney?
No.
He was in The Cutting Edge, and
Yes.
yes,
Duh.
yes, he was in The Cutting Edge, which is a movie most remembered for the line "toe pick," spoken by someone that it was not DB Sweeney. So then, outside of outside of maybe The Cutting Edge, is this his best? So this too small of a role, is this the greatest moment of his acting career?
Ouch. It could have been. Wow. I mean, when you say it like that, yeah, I'll hang my hat on it. Yep. It was the biggest chance that it could have been, and it wasn't. Cutting Edge toe pick. That's all that mattered.
Okay.
What else? I mean, I honestly, I couldn't even say off the top of my head other than that one.
Oh, what DB Sweeney's done?
Yeah, I mean, I know he's most recently been in a TV show. I remember seeing some of the commercials for it and all that, but I mean,
Right. Recently he's in a TV show. If you look on IMDb, The Cutting Edge is definitely what he's known for most. Other than that, there's like Fire the Sky, Two Tickets to Paradise, Megalopolis, which was a massive bomb that happened this recently that's on there. So, but there's not a whole lot. If you look through his filmography, there's not going to be a whole lot of things that are overly popular. His name is one that I always remember, but then I think he benefits somewhat from that going by DB Sweeney like that. It's like once you hear it a couple times, you're likely to remember that if you hear it again later. And so he has that. The late 80s were good to him. He had 8 Men Out, and then other than that, he's in ensemble stuff where it's like, they have Memphis Belle. He does The Cutting Edge a few years later, the Fire in the Sky. He's in some Tales from the Crypt stuff. He's doing some things where he's someone in the movie, but he's not the big star of anything. And so, or he's like the second banana, like in the movie Spawn, where he was Terry Fitzgerald, who was the guy that married Spawn's wife. Which I don't know if you've ever seen Spawn. So if you haven't seen Spawn, or if you listen to this and you have no idea what Spawn is, Spawn is a comic book that was made in the 90s about I don't know what was he? He was a mercenary that got killed and sold his soul to the devil and was coming back, and etc. So that's probably enough about Spawn. But anyway, so he was in that, and so there really isn't a lot of other great roles or great movies or shows or anything that you're looking at with them. So I'm just wondering, was this the greatest thing DB Sweeney's ever done? Well, second greatest, because apparently The Cutting Edge is
Edge, man.
The Cutting Edge is okay. Fine, we'll just stick with The Cutting Edge and move on.
We doing ads now?
Yeah, I'm gonna do the ad now.
Do that.
Want to hear more of us? Become a subscribing member of the Adrian Moment. It is just $5 a month or $50 a year and really helps support our show. Members gain access to bonus content for this and many other shows in the Next Reel family of film podcasts. Today's bonus content is a discussion about sports gambling, specifically how it is portrayed in this movie versus real life. What is the lesson Major League Baseball took away from the 1919 scandal? And what are some of the best movies to watch that contain sports gambling?
And we're back.
All right, let's talk about the movie again. There's a few things that I thought were interesting about the way they threw the games. So jumping into the first game. Game one, So Eddie is the pitcher for game one. He is the only one that was smart enough to get paid up front. And so that he does the prearranged signal to hit the first batter with a pitch to let everybody know that the fix was on. And then
It was supposed to be the first pitch, though.
I thought it was just the first batter. I didn't. Was it the first pitch? Am I just misremembering?
First batter, first pitch. Yeah.
Ooh. Okay. So yeah. Well, the first pitch was a strike, and then the second pitch was hitting the batter. So they let him know it's on. So he throws it dramatically, and I'm gonna jump ahead a bit because I'll put a pin in that. I'll get back to that. Then lefty throws it in game two, and it really slightly more believable. The first one was, it was 9-1. It was ridiculous, all the stuff he was doing. The second one was a little bit more believable, but in between games 2 and 3. When Kid Gleason, he goes in and out of Comiskey's room, they have that scene where everybody's going in and out of all the hotel rooms, which really, in a scene like that, I was like, shouldn't there be women in here somewhere? It was all just like bookies going in and out of rooms, or the manager going in and out of the owner's room or something. I was like, there's no women anywhere around? And the scene, I thought, was done in a way that they did not really convey the conversation that had. So do you think that Kid Gleason, John Mahoney, Kid Gleason told the owner Comiskey that there was a fix?
Yeah. Maybe not said that there is a fix that is in play. I think, if anything, he may have alluded to the fact that some of the guys may be considering going on the take to throw the series.
Because the movie leaves it vague, let's assume for the benefit of the doubt that he does. if he tells him that, then do you think that that is the end of the manager's responsibility to stop this, or should he have done something else?
You mean the owner?
No, the manager. So Kid Gleason's the manager.
Oh,
So,
yeah. Oh, yeah.
so
Okay.
Kid,
No, I thought you were talking.
once he tells the owner
Yes.
goes and has the conversations with the they're not the commissioners of the commissioners of the league, because at that point there was no commissioner. So they had the commissioners of the leagues, and he goes and talks to them and comes in and out, and they're all fighting and nothing can get agreed upon and whatever. But he is still the manager of this team. So
Yep.
is telling the owner enough to that he's out, or should he have done more?
I think he should have done more. There was opportunities to make sure that Eddie wasn't going to throw again. Like if you know that one of your top pitchers is supposedly in air quotes on the take, why would you put him back out there again?
I would wonder the same thing, especially given the in the next game, Dickie Kerr comes in and pitches and he wins, and they know he's not on the take. So should he have just said, "I don't care about Dickie Kerr's arm. We're just going to pitch him the rest of the series"?
It's not an uncommon thing back then. Like if there was a scheduled doubleheader, it was common that a scheduled doubleheader would feature the same pitcher, and he would have thrown a complete game 2 on the same day. So yeah, I think it's entirely possible. I don't know why the manager at that time didn't consider that, at least throwing him back in back-to-back games.
Okay. So
and as we're sitting here talking about that, I wish I would have done some research to see really how common was it for them to go and throw back-to-back games back then.
Well,
in a World Series setting.
Well, I don't know about a World Series setting, but definitely more common that they would throw back-to-back games then than now. You'd never see it now. So this era of baseball was considered the dead ball era. So for those listening at home, Jim, what was the dead ball era?
I mean, for all intents and purposes, the dead ball era was a lackluster era of no offense. And it was predominantly because pitchers were allowed to do whatever you wanted to the ball. In the movie, they kind of talk about it. They're like, oh, you can't throw your shine ball.
What's a shine ball?
Well, they would occasionally show Eddie on the mound rubbing a ball on his pant leg, which you can't do anywhere on the mound, or as a pitcher, you're not allowed to rub the ball on your pant leg at all. And it's because of the rule that was in place in 1920 to eliminate putting a foreign substance onto the ball.
And what would be the advantage of doing that?
I mean, the advantage is like you can gain additional grip, or you can gain additional slippage so that you can make the ball do things that you shouldn't be able to do.
What does that mean? Make the ball do things you shouldn't be able to do?
Okay, so like a spitball, the ball would look like, to the batter, it would look like a fastball. So the type of rotation on the ball you can pick up as the batter, and you can see, oh, it's a fastball. But then the ball, as a spitball or as the shine ball, it is going to elude in a different way than a similar pitch like a fork ball. Or these pitchers then were using foreign substances to have the ball appear to the batters that it was like a fastball, but it might dive, or the ball might dive at the last second, or just completely give out all of its power, if you will, all of the inertia, and the ball would just like pretty much die right there, or dive, or go up, all depending on how they would rough up or use a foreign substance. So if you used spit, or if you used some kind of a lubrication, like
you're some kind of a lubrication. Yeah,
we're adults here.
So they can lubricate the ball.
It would change shape of the ball.
Oh, change the actual shape of the ball.
No. They say change the shape of the flight of the ball.
Okay, all right. Okay,
it would elude. Yeah. So during the dead era, it was allowed to do whatever you wanted to the ball as a pitcher. I mean, you couldn't sit there and like, well. No, you could. I mean, they could have scuffed it up against their zippers and stuff. I mean, it didn't matter.
And so, given that, when they made these rule changes, that became the live ball era where there was more offense. And at this point in time, you have a lot of low scoring games. Correct?
Yeah. During the dead ball era, it was no offense. Yep.
Then in the movie, one of the things that I find interesting from the beginning of the movie, when the gamblers are talking about trying to fix it, they immediately say that they need about 6 to 8 players. And they get a hold of Chick, and Chick says, okay, well, we'll get some other players on board. They get I think it was one of the infielders, the Swede. They get the Swede. So Chick gets Swede, I believe, to be in on it. And then Eddie Collins is coming in, and then they finally get to Eddie Chicote, who's the pitcher. And then that's good. And then they start to divide and conquer, or they bring in Charlie Sheen as That's just a weird name to say. And honestly, I think it is interesting seeing Charlie Sheen in this movie because, I mean, now that was too small of a role. I mean, basically what he caught like a fly ball and then just bragged about throwing the World Series in a bar, and that was the whole role, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, I think he nailed it.
Exactly. So then I go back to, I think maybe Tom Hanks would have done it. All right. Now, anyway, they get Hap and they get sorry, I was digressing. They get Hap and then they somewhat convince Shoeless Joe to get it, but then getting Lefty, who is the other prominent pitcher, in, he wasn't going to do it. And then when he found out that Eddie was in, then he was in. And so there are 8 of them in this, and while they're all implicitly or explicitly going to get money, which they all don't. And so what I was wondering about that with the fix is that given that this is the dead ball era, do they really need this many people? Couldn't they have just done it once Chick and Swede figured out that they were going to do it? Once they get Eddie, the pitcher, Eddie Chicote, and then Lefty in, isn't that all they need? Because there's not a lot of offense. So if they have the pitchers, doesn't that mean that the game is going to get thrown? I mean, even in it, when Charlie Sheen is doing his one scene about, bragging about throwing it.
What's the scoop here, Hap? Yeah, the word is you made a bundle.
Yeah, sure, I saw some cash. They promised us all 20,000 each, but all I saw was 5. What am I gonna do, call a cop?
You look pretty good out there for a guy dumping games.
Something must have come over me.
You mean you double-crossed the gamblers?
No, I'm a man of my word.
So, why'd you do it, Hap? Somebody lean on you?
Everybody else was getting some. And I figured without the pitchers we're gonna lose anyway, so why shouldn't I get fat too? Maybe dumb, fellas, but I'm not stupid.
So, in order to keep this a secret and to keep the circle smaller, do you really think they needed so many people? Or could they have done it with just Chick and Swede, because they're already in, they know. But if you just had just the 4 of them, Eddie and Lefty, could they have just done it with that?
I think they could have. The only thing that keeps bringing me back to, maybe you needed more was there was a statement that I think it was Chick that said, we need Buck because, he could win the whole damn series himself.
But could he?
Right.
The World Series at this point, this is a 9-game series, which is crazy. They do in the movie, they portray that there's 8 games. And they do portray, of course, the scene when they are all starting to have the change of heart later, which we will get to. But there's a scene where Shoeless Joe hits that home run. And in the 8 games, that was the only home run.
Yep.
So,
which, I mean, that was common.
There
wasn't many home runs back then, but yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I'm wondering, do they even need the pitchers? Couldn't they just done it without the other guys?
And what's crazy is that the movie is portraying that 8 got banished. So to me, I'm saying that it's crazy because as we're talking, I'm like, yeah, you only need 4. But in actuality, they had the 8. And so, the movie is portraying a real life scenario. So, it would be nice to be able to say, oh, well, no, the movie just, over dramatized it. You didn't really need 8. And here we are, we're talking. We're like, no, I mean, why is it that us could figure out you really only need 4? But back then, these guys are sitting around like, no, we need more. There wasn't a whole lot of offense in baseball then. Cincinnati, I don't think was that much of a powerhouse. The White Sox were the powerhouse. I mean, it's just like, I don't see why you would think that you would need more. I agree. I think 4 would have been more than enough. And that question, since we've talked about it over this week, I'm just like, why did you guys feel that you needed more? Like, you didn't.
They didn't. And really, this movie does show these players, which I find interesting. It does show these players in a lot of different ways, various ways of where they're not that bright. They are making decisions that are obviously bad decisions. Even if you're going to throw it, then not only the having so many guys, because that makes the circle too big, bragging about it afterwards because you're morons,
right?
Not getting paid up front, also not bright. And so I guess maybe I'll circle back around. Now, do you feel a little bit better about DB Sweeney's portrayal of Joe Jackson as stupid? Because it sounds like there wasn't a bunch of geniuses on this team.
Yeah, maybe it's an era thing. I don't know. It's crazy to think, like, were they really that I don't want to say stupid. Just did.
Maybe they were. They made a lot of not bright decisions. Even if you're going to do something that is as bad, or for some people's perspective, as reprehensible as throwing a World Series, you could at least do that smartly. and they did that in a stupid way. They threw it in a dumb way. The way the first game was thrown, it was
Right.
done so obviously. And
Yep.
given that you're in a dead ball era, you don't need to give up 5 runs in
No.
one inning to do that. You could give up 3 runs and then kind of see what happens. Especially in that game, if I remember correctly, the White Sox were home in the first game. Eddie could have made sure to get through most of the game and then, only give them a couple 2 or 3 run leads and then make sure up to 4 or 5 maybe at the end in the ninth before they're going to bat last. But again, it was like that would have required some forethought and been a little bit smarter. And so so I guess I'm going to try to use that as a little bit of defense of DB Sweeney as portraying Joe Jackson as an idiot, because I mean, amongst this group, Shoeless Joe Jackson is known as not the bright one.
Right. And here we are, we're questioning the other 7 of the 8.
Well, not all 7. There is the whole Buck Weaver through line, so the Buck Weaver through line of this movie is because John Cusack is playing our hero, Buck Weaver, who is a part of the initial conversation and then decides that he's not going to throw the games at all. He doesn't decide that he's not going to get paid. He just doesn't get paid, it seems, but that seemed to be more a fact of the bookies not paying them than him deciding it. He was also vocal in some ways, or at least winking a nod with Kid Gleason to understand, hey, these guys are throwing it and they're not on the up and up. And he is rolled into this because he was just aware of the fix more so than his actual participation in it. First off, did you find John Cusack believable in all this? Like when I say believable, I mean, do you think they did a good enough job pulling off that Buck Weaver is a wronged party in this and not just someone who had a crisis of conscience when it came to actually doing the deed that he implicitly agreed to do?
I think it was kind of like a gray area between that crisis of cautious, or however you just phrased it. But
well, like a crisis of conscience. Like, should he? Well, yeah, crisis of conscience. Was it just that he couldn't do it?
First of all, I think he did a phenomenal job. I love John. John's good. But the portrayal of the character, I wanted to dig more into Buck. It was like,
okay.
And that's where I found some more of my research and stuff, and just like digging in on him and, finding that, every single year he was putting in a letter, out to.
Oh, you mean in real life? Oh,
yeah,
yes.
Like
yes.
Real life
in real life. Yes.
Like,
after this, he was trying to, yeah.
Yeah. So like the story that we're seeing, I mean, rewatching it now, it was like, okay, I think they could have done a little bit better job of separating him from the group.
Well, I feel they did that with the kids. So, because he's the only one that interacts with these kids.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the kids are in there partly for that line of like,
say it ain't so, Joe. Say it ain't so.
Right. But other than that, the interaction with the kids and how he is, in a sense, the conversations he's having with these kids seems to be more a portrayal of whether, trying to get in some exposition, but also his perspective of it and how he may be different. The most poignant scene, of course, is the one where he's talking to the kid saying, what is it? You got to stand up for your friends. If you don't stand up for your friends, there's not much you can say about a guy. But then, and I get what they're portraying in the movie with that. At least for me, though, I felt like, well, are they friends? I
just really good teammates.
Yeah, they're teammates. I don't know that they're friends.
Yeah, I was trying to think if there was any storyline or dialogue of like, hey, Buck, when you came over to the house, I was trying to recall if there was any kind of storyline or dialogue that could help us understand more of the quote unquote friendship, rather than, because the way that I just always interpreted it until you presented that line back at me about it, I just always interpreted that he was just a really good teammate. Never really thought of him as like, these are my friends.
Right. So then he, by that own admission inside of the story, then it sounds like that Buck should have said something, although you can't really write that into the movie, and we can't blame the writers for that because Buck didn't actually say anything. So
right.
So then they would be making up more things, which any movie that is inspired by or based on a true story, you can pick apart for like, well, this didn't really happen this way.
All the interpretation of the information.
Exactly. Now, the one thing we could judge the movie on from a movie standpoint is, what did you think of how the baseball in the movie was depicted? Was it believable, unbelievable, something in between?
For what little bits we see, I I think it is very believable for that time era. And the reason why I believe so is that, one thing that people might not realize, it wasn't until the late middle 50s, you could, and it was a rule, you could leave your mitt at second base. It wasn't your mitt, and it was something that was shared with your opponents. So it was a rule change in the 50s that you were allowed to use your own mitt. You didn't have to just leave a mitt behind. No,
Wait, they had to leave the mitt there?
yeah. But in the 50s, so it was more of like in the earlier years, it was a hardened rule. So in the scenes here, you see one of the players throw a mitt over his shoulder, right? And you're probably not even really thinking much of it. Like, oh, he's just threw it over his shoulder. And in another scene, he's handing a mitt to one of the players, the opposing player, as he's coming onto the field. You don't really put a whole lot of thought into it. But from a baseball historic perspective, that is accurate. You shared mitts in the positions. If you played second base, you had one mitt on that field for second base. You didn't have your own mitt.
What if your hands were dramatically different sizes?
Oh no, they weren't like tailored mitts like they are now. No, man, these things were like think of like the worst winter gloves that you ever had, leathered, wrapped 500 more times. I mean, these things were just like, for the most part, they were like broken down catcher's mitts. I mean, they're massive. So it didn't matter what size hand you were. I mean, if you were like a gargantuan type person, a huge person, which I'm sure there was a number of guys that came in, but I mean, Babe Ruth was a big dude. Sure. Maybe there was some certain situations that some players, may have been uncomfortable, but considering so it's crazy to think like mitts really in 1919, it was still somewhat of a new thing. I mean, guys were playing barehanded in the late 1800s.
Oh, okay. Well,
great.
Wow. Then the invention of the mitt was the creature comfort for him then.
Right.
Okay. So
right.
then.
So everybody used it.
Okay, so you like the accuracy of the mitt sharing, but then outside of that, like, so I guess maybe the way to think of it is like this. So the baseball in this movie, is it better, or like how would you rank them if you were to say, oh, 8 men out, let's go major league, and I'm
You can't. That's not
8
a
men
fair
out major
comparison.
league, or like
I'm not watching 8 men out for the baseball.
You're not watching Major League for the baseball. So, you're watching.
No, I'm watching Major League for all the jokes and stuff, but the
Exactly.
baseball in Major
Yeah,
League is significant, and it's really good baseball. But the baseball that needed to be shared
Wait, you thought the baseball in the Major League was really good baseball?
It's decent. I mean, for actors that could actually play baseball, with the exclusion of one actor couldn't play baseball.
Okay.
And there's a reason why he was written the way that he was written, because he couldn't play baseball.
Okay. All right.
That's for another show for another day.
I guess it's so then the baseball then in this movie is not as good in your opinion as the baseball in Major League.
I mean, it's baseball in 1919. It's an accurate depiction of probably what baseball was like. It wasn't much happening. It was the dead ball era for a reason.
Okay. All right.
Now, as a pitcher, I would have loved to have seen more of what the shine and the other things that Eddie threw. I would have loved to have seen like more action about those types of pitches, because from a significance perspective, you're talking about it. It's mentioned in the movie, hey, Eddie, next year, you're probably not going to be able to have your shine with the rule changes. So, I mean, it would have been cool as a director to be able to maybe emphasize some of those importance to those players, what that ball would have looked like, like Fake It or something. I don't know. Movie magic, man. That's what I'm saying.
Okay. I want to talk for a moment about the ending of the movie and how really a couple things came together that were slightly different. One, there was the verdict of the trial where they are accused of a confidence scheme, which I feel just is a made up way to get them into a court, because I wasn't sure, at least, I mean, this is how I felt in the movie when they fix World Series, they lose in 8. It's not good. The reporters come out with all the articles about them fixing it. They are straight up owning that they fixed it by confessing it to every bartender that they can find. And then after that, they have the trial. But I found myself wondering this: did you think that it was illegal? because I didn't think that this was illegal. To fix a game while not good, I don't know if it's against the law.
See, and that's where I had conflictions because gambling at this point in time is illegal. So why are the players on trial?
Well, they all left. The bookies left.
Yeah, sure. The bookies left. They're sitting right there watching the trial as it was happening.
No, they left before the trial. And this is definitely pre-TV, so they don't know what happened. But all the scenes when they're getting on the boats, and what is it? The short boxer bookie, he's teaching himself Spanish in line. That's all before the trial.
Sure, okay, but still,
going to the end of the movie, they are acquitted in the trial, and I for some reason cannot say acquitted appropriately right there. Yes, they are acquitted of the charges, and then, well, in the movie they don't play baseball anymore. The new commissioner bans them for life, and the ban is very broad sweeping.
Regardless of the verdict of juries, no player who throws a ball game, no player who undertakes or promises to throw a game, no player who sits in conference with a bunch of crooked players and gamblers, where the ways and means of throwing a ball game are discussed, and does not promptly tell his club about it, will ever play professional baseball again.
They go from that scene down to, let's see, the Buck Weaver's, obviously protesting his innocence. And then they show Shoeless Joe Jackson playing in Hoboken. So he's in Hoboken, New Jersey, playing in I presume this is a minor league game under an assumed name. And he's just kind of, playing baseball as a part of this team. And then they have that little conversation there at the end about, that was, who was Shoeless Joe Jackson? Because the people there hadn't seen him play, and that, he's saying he's the greatest, blah, blah, blah. Right. So that is a nice sad ending for this movie in a sense. And I was wondering then that, when I think of these type of movies, I think about them in a couple ways. One, there is how they portray the people, especially when they're inspired by a true story, how they portray the people that are real people. And yes, these things really did happen. But also in this type of framing, it really then starts to feel like the whole thing is sad. And again, we're supposed to feel sad for these men that through the World Series, that it was, that it really was, and I guess that's what maybe that's what I'm kind of even struggling with to form as a question or idea, is that why do you think this movie portrayed them as sad versus as guys that were just like, no, we were just going to try to get one over and we just didn't pull it off?
I think it's for me it's the love of the game, right? I mean, here it is, somebody that supposedly was a phenomenal player, speed, bat, throw, he could catch. He was the 5-tool player before 5 tools could be a thing. So
I don't know what that means.
To me,
what's a 5-tool player?
A 5-tool player. You can run. That's one, right? You can hit. You can throw. You can catch. Run, hit, throw, and catch.
And then run. Like it's like dodgeball, dip, dive, dodge, just like dodge. Dodge, duck, dip, dive, dodge.
So I think it ends up being sad because because here's this person that only got to play. I mean, do you know how long he ended up playing without doing it? I mean, before you did any research on Shoeless Joe Jackson, yeah, like how many years did you?
Shoeless Joe Jackson was only ever just a name I'd heard of before, and I did. Right. He was one of those names of where I've heard the name and I don't know. I didn't even know why I'd heard the name, and then I saw this movie and I was like, oh, that's why.
That's why. Okay, so I mean, and I didn't know like in any part of your research how many years he played, but he played only for 13 years. So from a baseball perspective, especially
13 years in the majors,
13 years in the majors. That's it.
Okay. All right.
So, to me, it's sad because somebody like that with all the promise, 13 years isn't a whole lot for back then.
Okay.
And, so there was a whole lot of promise. So to me, it's sad because like nobody truly got to see how great he could have been. We only got to see how great he was at that point in time. So to me, it's sad. because it's like a lot of these players, it wasn't necessarily the end of their career, but from a player to player perspective, it's sad because, oh man, you guys could have gotten there so many more times. Like I was saying earlier in the show, I mean, these
maybe
guys were already great, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
maybe.
how many more times could you? Oh no, they had it sealed up.
Maybe
They had it sealed up.
Well, not with the rule changes. Once they said that
Oh well, with the
the
shine
team
and all
was
that.
very
Yeah.
the team was very
Yeah,
picture
when
dominant.
those changes through,
Eddie's arm was already hurting. They were going to change the rules, so maybe.
right. But then
And
you
so,
have all these other pitchers and stuff. But anyways, I mean, we're talking about Shoeless Joe Jackson. He only played 13 years.
right, but what I'm talking about though is the tenor of the entire movie. The entire movie portrays these guys as victims,
Right.
and I guess I kind of wonder about that choice of will these guys legitimately victims or they got caught. Baseball games were fixed a lot back then because all you needed was a pitcher, and so you could fix a game.
They want you visually to feel the sadness for these guys, right? I mean, you want to get pulled into the sadness. Oh, these poor guys, Comiskey, he was a big fat cat and he wasn't giving you all this, but really at the end of it, yeah, man, you guys did something crappy and you guys got caught.
Yeah, but wouldn't it have been a better movie had they portrayed them more as, look, we were just trying to do this thing and we got caught?
I mean, that's an interesting movie.
I felt that. Well, I mean, but I felt that it dragged down. So, like when you think about the movie and how you think about this as far as good or bad. So, in reviewing it in its totality, I find that it would have been a better movie had they been guys that were like, yeah, we tried to do this and got caught. But making it all sad is a thing of where you're like, okay, what's a sad movie? And you're trying to pull at my emotional heartstrings, but your victims are not very sympathetic. And that to me, I feel is a choice of the movie. The facts of what happened are the facts of what happened. But it doesn't mean that the motivation was like it was what they were saying. These guys, a lot of these guys were, and bears out. There were a good number of these, especially the eight, that they were at the end of their careers anyway. They maybe had a few more years in them. Most of them, if we go back to real life, most of them played one other year before that because it was another year before the ban happened. But they most of them were near the end anyway. And so it's like, well, they maybe we're just going to try to get one last payout to come out. And then is that then to me, and I guess to me, that sounds like a better movie. That sounds like, hey, man, we fought the law and the law won versus, oh, woe is me. This all happened to us. We're poor guys that were getting paid $92,000 a year, but we couldn't make ends meet, and they took all this from us, and we were just innocent. Wow. So that's kind of what I felt about the movie. So it really kind of detracted from the movie because then at the end, you're trying to tell me that this Shoeless Joe Jackson guy is some great guy, and it's like, so, but he's obviously not bright, and he's so not bright that he can't figure out any way to do anything with all the money he made other than just continue to play baseball in the minor leagues under assumed names because there's no internet. I don't, it's just a lot of.
It's probably independently, but yeah,
exactly. Either way, it's a thing of where I felt that the choice of portraying them as victims made it a worse movie. So getting off my soapbox for a minute. Then the movie as a whole, what did you think of that?
it's always been one of my favorites.
Really?
And yeah,
This
I've
movie's
always
been
enjoyed
one of your favorite movies. Is it just because it's a baseball movie, or is it like what about
Yeah.
it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. No,
Is
it
it
was
so
just
it's the fact that it's baseball?
yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. And it's I love the good, the bad, the ugly of the history of baseball, and it's just always been one of those movies that I've just categorized as like, yeah, it's helping me understand a portion in a timeline of baseball that obviously I never was able to witness or see. It was like it was another way for me to rather than read about things, it was always visually a nice representation to me. It's like, all right, I like that. But then we started digging into it differently, and I came out with a slightly different point of view from time to time as I was watching it. It'll struggle sometimes.
Man, Jim, it is always great to talk about movies with you. If you really enjoy the show, please become a supporting member at thenextreel.com/join. For $5 a month or $55 a year, you will gain members-only access to bonus show content for this and many other shows in the Next Reel family of film podcasts. To become a subscribing member, click on the link in our show notes. Like, rate, listen, and most importantly, share this podcast with anyone you know that loves sports and movies. Cool. So, Jim, what do you think Major League Baseball took away as the lesson about sports gambling in 1919?
You got to put in some provisions, some harsh provisions to ensure that, the sanctity of the game is there. It's the threat. The threat, I think, is what they ended up taking away and implementing, like, oh, you're going to be banned from baseball if you're caught. And they have provisions now to be able to catch people and all that stuff. But yeah, that's what I think they ended up taking away. The owners needed a voice outside of just the owner saying, we got to stop this. And you bring in the commissioner, and the commissioner writes in a rule that's pretty wide, right? I mean, it's, you knowingly can't do this, but if you're aware of somebody doing this, you have to speak openly. And, it's like, it's a pretty girthy rule. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
It is, and I agree with you in that that's what they took away from it, but I think that was the wrong lesson. They seem to take away a lesson of punishment and be like, how can we then, that seemed to be what they took away from it. And so what I think that they really should have taken away from that more is maybe we should pay these players more, because the only thing that the owners or anyone really cares about is let's keep the money coming in. And from a fan's perspective, by and large, the fans of any game or any sport will put up with a lot of different things. The one thing they won't put up with is if they think the game is rigged. And so if you pay the players more money, you then make it where it is out of reach for gamblers to then be able to bribe them, because that is what you really live in today, where today they make so much money that you can't give them enough money to bribe them. Yes, I think that what they took away from it was punishment. What they should take away from it is, hey, let's pay the players more so that way they won't fix games and we'll be fine, because obviously they're worth a lot more because of all this gambling.
And what's funny is that, over time, those rules have been put in place to what you're speaking to. But, and it's a shot right at the owners and, hey, you got to spend money. You got to make sure that the guys have, X amount of money. It's a tough rule, tough line that you're asking ownership across. But I completely agree with you. But even then, let's just take a look at today's Oakland A's. Until this year, for a number of years, they have been the lowest of paying their players. Like they are always the 30th. They're the lowest percentile for paying their players, right? So Major League Baseball ended up putting in different provisions and different laws or rules, not laws, for profit sharing. So there's like profit sharing now, and the lower teams get more money. So anyways, in the long and short of it, and without getting into all the crazy details that all entails of the profit sharing, the money and the percentage of money that they're supposed to use, Oakland got in trouble for not utilizing the profit sharing money. So they had a payroll that was less than what they were getting from profit sharing from all the other franchises. So they were slapped with a penalty that you had to pay the players more. and they had to take on a certain payroll this year for 2025. Otherwise, they would have been penalized. So this year, they actually signed a number of players to some obscene contracts so that they could be within the law or the rules that Major League Baseball had set to hopefully and probably, presumably, what you're talking about, would have stopped anybody from potentially, gambling and wanting to take on extra money. But these poor A's, I mean, most of these kids and most of these guys, you're under control for 6 years, depending on like when you got drafted and all this other stuff. Let's just call it 6 years. It's either a 4-year or 6-year control. And when you're under control, it's part of there's a certain portion where you're only going to get the major league minimum. And right now it's $725,000. So I know,
that's it,
right? That's it.
How are you supposed to live on that?
But you're one of one. So, I mean, from a player standpoint, you are one of so few humans that can do what these people are doing. So, and it's a huge moneymaker. Baseball's huge. It's enough money for us, normal people who can't perform what they're doing. I'm looking at it and like 725, dude, I could live off of that pretty handsomely. I would have been happy playing baseball for like 50,000 back in the day. But anyways, there's provisions and rules that are put in place to make sure that, players are supposed to be paid handsomely. But Oakland has been able to illustrate, and Tampa Bay has been able to illustrate that I don't need to pay these guys a lot of money.
Foreshadowing.
They're going to go out there and they're going to perform and they're going to be who they are, right? So, I mean, Oakland has been on the low payroll for a long, long time, and they've got some money now that they had to spend because the rules that are there. So it's kind of like rules are put in place for people to break or find ways to find that gray area. So I could go on tangents about the rules and the baseball. It should have been the owners need to take better ownership and better pride in the products that they're putting on the field. And you need to take care of these people. And in certain ownership groups, I don't believe that they truly are. And then you have all these other rules that are put in place, and it's like, oh, hey, look, we are doing what we should be doing. And you go off and you pay 3 people who you signed to pretty large deals, and it puts them into the number of, hey, and Major League Baseball is looking back at Oakland and saying, hey, yeah, you guys did everything right. Thanks for spending the amount of money that you were supposed to spend. But then here's all these other people who are still making less than the 3 major contracts that they signed. So I don't know. Anyways, big tangent. Sorry about that, Ocean, but
that's all right. That was foreshadowing. Okay. So then, so then that really then, I think we have gone in the reverse order where you've answered the question about what I was going to ask about the scene where Eddie tells his wife about fixing the series. And he says that the problem is not the players, but the owners and the gamblers who make all the money and are not on trial for anything. And you, I think, are a solid yes on agreeing with that sentiment. So we will move on.
What about you though? I mean, just don't take me and all of my words into it. I mean, what did you feel about that?
If it's really on the owners or is it on the players alone? The owners and gamblers and the players alone. I find that I put more of it on the players than the owners or the gamblers. There is a part of it where the amount of money that you have at that point, and believe me, I understand about keeping up with the Joneses and not, but the amount of money they have is a thing of where it's like, you're not talking about needs, you're talking about wants. And so when you're talking about wants, there is the part of it where to gamble on the game or fix a game. Honestly, I don't even have a problem with gambling on games. Like I think they should be able to gamble on games they're not participating in. But I get why that is a slippery slope, and I get why there are rules against that. But to fix a game is the type of thing that I think is really more on the players. They don't have to do that. They do have enough to live. It is not a need. It is only a want. And then there are other ways or other avenues to try to get that. They may not be apparent, but at the same time, by selling out the one thing that you're really blessed in a lot of ways to do. Not only are you blessed to do this in that you're good enough to do it, but you're blessed to do it in that your livelihood is gained through playing a game. And that is amazing. And I mean, while it's a different sport, Ray Lewis always was saying that Sundays they get for free. They're paying me from Monday through Saturday. And I know baseball players were the same way. Like all the practices and all the travel and all that, that's what they're paying them for. The actual games, those guys will all play it for free. And so
Yeah.
when you're in that boat and you're able to do those things, then it becomes a thing of where to fix it, that's on you. And that it isn't a thing of where it's somebody else's fault and they made you, because that's more of my thoughts on it. And so but then in the movie itself, so getting back to that, how the sports gambling was portrayed. So there at the very beginning, it's murky. It is portrayed as if people know what's going on, but the bookies are there out in the open. And at this point in time in history, gambling is illegal. But everyone seems to be aware of it, and everyone seems to be kind of okay with it. And so I was curious about, like, do you think that, did you find that to be a thing of where you're taking advantage of the fact that it's legal now, so we think of it as something out in the open, or is it that they just, did a bad choice as far as trying to portray gambling as if it was some acceptable thing that everybody knew about and was okay with in this movie by having it so out in the open and not having it where you had to seek out a bookie, but there was like a dude in the stands. You could just bet with him right there, So, yeah. So what did you think about that choice in the movie to make it where it seemed, because look, I don't believe there's any way that it was actually like that. And so then it's like, well, you've chosen to make it where you're going to put the bookies and everyone all front and center to make it appear as if gambling is just this accepted thing that everybody does.
You know what? It was the biggest problem I had.
How so?
There was one particular scene that there's like a bunch of suits in what looked like almost like a casino, and everybody's got their hands up and there's tickets and they're like, hey, I want to bet so-and-so in Cincinnati. I heard somebody's got 9,000 on Cincinnati. Everybody's moving to Cincinnati. And I started watching that and I was like, what is the state of gambling in 1919? So like I had to pause the movie and I had to do some research, because all the times I've watched this movie, I never really thought of it like, oh, well, gambling is illegal or not illegal. But, I'm sitting here watching it with a slightly different eye for our show. And then I was really curious. I had no idea if gambling was legal or not. So yeah, then I had to do a little digging and holy crap, it's illegal. And so then I started getting a little upset, because to me, visually, there's no discussion of like how hard it is to place a bet with a bookie. I mean, maybe I'm just so naive. I hear the word bookie and I feel like I have to go underneath an overpass and know a secret word or something, and then I can place a bet. But I mean, visually, they're making it look like everybody could just place a bet. And you just like hold up your hand with money and be like, oh, I got 900 to put on Cincinnati or whatever. It was just like, so it irked me that here I am. I had to stop and find out, okay, well, is gambling allowed or not in this time period? And I love time period pieces. And so visually I'm looking at this and I'm like, I'm confused. Like it just made it seem like it was readily available and easy to place a bet. And you're hearing that so-and-so had moved his money and is now betting on Cincinnati. And it's like, okay, well, the network of these people are insane. The ability to place a bet is unheard of. Like you just put money up in the air and then you can place a bet.
Well, when it comes to that is
it irked me because I didn't know if that was an accurate depiction.
It clearly wasn't. I mean, sports gambling became legal in the entire country in 2018. So before then, you could do it in Vegas, you could do it in New Jersey, and you could do it on the casinos that are some of the. You know what? I don't know that you could do it in the casinos because the tribal land casinos, since they don't have to abide by federal law. I think some of those you could do it, but by and large, it wasn't until 2018. So this isn't like a back in the day thing when gambling was illegal. It's been illegal until.
Right, for a long time.
7 years ago.
I didn't know if it was like a prohibition thing or what. And like some of and like the newer, like Washington State, you're not supposed to, bet on apps. Like you can't
Right,
do,
you can't do the apps on the phones.
bet.com, right?
Yeah,
Or whatever,
yeah.
right? So, and I think there is just even, so yeah, I mean, it defaults federal, state levels and all that stuff, and everybody's got to do their own thing. And Washington State is completely different than everybody else when it comes to betting online.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, I didn't know, because of the impact of prohibition and betting and all that. I don't know. It seemed visually weird to me.
Prohibition hadn't happened yet.
No, I know. So I didn't know if, so me saying that, I didn't know if it was just like readily and steadily available for anybody and everybody to just place a bet. Like you could just, hey, a bookie was like an actual job. Like,
well, there's always been ways to find that and get that. You don't have to be that seedy, because you could find bookies that place bets. I just found that it's an interesting portrayal of having it where it was so out in the open and readily available for everybody to do that, and that and then they then they charge them with committing a crime. And so that just seems over the top for me as far as the movie. But why don't we wrap this up by discussing best sports gambling movies to watch? The list that I could come up with right now was Casino. There's Casino, Two for the Money. There's 8 Men Out. White Men Can't Jump, The Color of Money, or The Hustler. But I chose The Color of Money because I've seen that one and not The Hustler. Or as the dark horse, Ocean's 11. And that is because the money that they are stealing in Ocean's 11 is from the fight between Lennox Lewis and Vladimir Klitschko, which was a fantasy fight that should have happened, but never did. And if it had happened, I'd have bet on it.
You would have found a bookie, a seedy one.
Well, I'd have probably just flown to Vegas and bet on it. So then, what the thing that surprised me was that you have committed the, dare I say, sin of not having seen quite a few of these movies. So then, of the ones that you have seen, which one is the best?
Specifically about
sports? That just has sports betting in it. I mean, look, Ocean's 11 is not specifically about sports betting.
I know.
Neither is 8 Men Out. White Men Can't Jump isn't about it. They're just gambling with each other, which really then is like, hey, does it count as sports? Okay, so then here's a tangent. Does it count as sports betting if you are just gambling between two participants?
I mean, you're betting.
You are, but you're betting on yourself against another person. So you both are putting up money. So there's kind of a bet there, but it's not like sports betting to me is like I'm betting on a competition between other people. Not of myself. So if
okay.
is that still like, do you consider that still sports gambling, or because you have but you have control, because when you gamble, like the word gamble implies like I don't really have any control. I'm just making a bet that this is what's going to happen, right? But if I'm the one playing and I bet on me, then I have some control.
I'm always betting on myself. It might be somebody that's better than me across the line or whatever the situation is, but to me it's sports betting. But I'll put money on myself in a situation. I mean, hell, if I would have put money on myself this past weekend, I would have lost majorly, but I was going into a particular game with a whole hell of a lot of confidence. And if I would have had fistfuls of money and there was a bookie or somebody that I could have been like, oh yeah, no, I totally got this, and all the side bets and little parlays within the game.
Okay.
Yeah, I would have came out like losing big time. But as a player,
then that may or may not be sports betting. Okay, fine. If that's sports betting, then okay. So then I'll return back to the original question. Which movies of those movies that have some flavor of sports gambling in them, which one's the best?
White Man Can't Jump.
White Man Can't Jump. Really? Wow. You know what? While I liked White Man Can't Jump, I mean there's a lot that I like there. I'm a big fan of Ocean's 11 because I love that movie as a whole.
Yeah.
But Casino to me was just, I mean, that's like one of those Francis Ford Coppola opuses where it's like, of course you gotta love Casino because it's Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci and Sharon Stone and being crazy. Yeah. So I liked Casino a lot, but of them, as far as, while I would argue that potentially Casino might be the best movie on here, as far as when I'm actually gonna watch again multiple times, it's Ocean's 11, no doubt.
Oh yeah, no, I've seen Ocean's 11 probably 11 times.